On today's episode of Adapt and Respond, we're going to talk about Texas 2026, what our expectations are for Steve Sarkisian's team, what our expectations are for Arch Manning, and just how good this Texas team can be given its schedule and its talent, and this all-important year 3 for Arch Manning, where he enters in as the starter for the second season in a row with what we think is a better supporting cast, but a different defensive coordinator, and frankly, a couple games on the road that ought to worry Texas fans, but not a whole lot does these days. All that's coming up after the bumper. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching Adapt and Respond, thank you for joining us here. We talk college football year-round. If you're into that, consider joining the more than 197,000 subscribers to Adapt and Respond, to college football podcast. You can also catch us on Spotify and on Apple if that's what you so choose. And today, I want to talk about Texas football. I want to talk about what this 2026 season should have in store for a Longhorns team that did not perform to expectations last year. Let's not get too far away from the point. This team was supposed to win the national championship in 2025. Full stop. You had everything that you thought you needed. You had a great tailback tandem in Quintravion Wisener, which you thought was going to be a really great CJ Baxter. You had great wide receiver play in Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore. You had a great linebacker in Anthony Hill, great defensive end, Colin Simmons, Pete Kwiatkowski, we thought was going to be the defensive coordinator to help put them over the top. And you were a far cry from the 6 consecutive losses that Steve Sarkisian had seen at Texas in his first year, first time that happened since 1956 at Texas. And you've been to the college football playoff not once but twice, and you even won a couple games there. So going into 2025, many people, myself included, thought the Texas ought to be the number 1 team in the country. You lose 14-7 to Ohio State, and you're up and down since then. Through the middle, especially with that loss to 3-9 Florida, it didn't look great for Texas. Didn't look outstanding for Arch Manning. Now, in fairness, Julian Sayin turned out to be the player that we thought Arch Manning was going to be. But there are those that believe that the criticism, and which is neither good or bad, just criticism, the negative criticism toward Arch Manning was unfounded and unwarranted. As a matter of fact, the Manning Passing Academy, Archie Manning, told this to KXAN News. I was kind of disappointed in a lot of people, the whole thing. They kind of crowned Arch before he ever played. I just don't think that was fair. Yeah, it was a little tough start. He played a great team, but I've never been more proud of anybody in my life. The way Arch battled through what he had to go through last year and the way he played the last 8 or 9 games of the season. Arch, who threw for 3,100 yards, 26 TDs, and also rushed for 399 yards with 10 more scores. So that's 36 total TDs. And he was the second leading rusher on this team and put together about 3,500 yards of offense on a team that won a bunch of games. Like, let's not get too far away from that. They won a bunch of games. But if you're talking about hitting the mark was playing for the national championship. That's what the mark was supposed to be. The mark was about, are you the best team in the SEC? No, you are not. Can you beat the best team in the SEC? Not when it counts. That's been Georgia for the last couple of years. And until somebody beats Georgia, it's their SEC, no matter what you think of LSU or Ole Miss or Alabama or even Oklahoma to that point. And I think that's part of it. That's a big part of it. But so much of this season is going to center around Arch because we expect him to be better. We expect him to keep up with Dante Moore, with Julian Sayin, with whoever you think are the best quarterbacks available heading into the 2027 NFL draft. And if Texas has the kind of season that, well, they're capable of, which is nothing less than what Indiana did last year, running the table undefeated, he ought to be the number 1 pick in the 2027 NFL draft. No matter that, I think Jeremiah Smith is my pick no matter what. If you need a quarterback, you're going to go get that guy. And it's going to be really difficult for someone to turn down an Arch Manning, not just because he is talented, but because you would really love to have that guy to be the face of your franchise. He says all the right things. He acts the right way. He is an easy guy to root for, get behind. Everybody loves him. The only thing I don't enjoy about Arch Manning is Archie defending him and Steve Sarkisian defending him. I also understand that's what they're going to do. So I put up with it, right? That's his head coach and his OC, and that's his granddaddy. I don't expect anything less. I'm saying, though, that for the most part, Arch Manning has lived a charmed existence, all right? And I don't want to get too far away from that before I tell you he also has everything you want to be a Heisman Trophy. He can a Heisman Trophy winner. He can do that for you. He just needs some help. The thing that I think really held Texas up last year wasn't the quarterback situation. It was the running back situation. Because I mentioned to you that Arch Manning was the second leading rusher on that team. And even with the sacks, rushing for 399 yards, 4.3 yards per carry, that's a ton as a quarterback. And that is also jaw-dropping when you consider Contravion Wisner was the leading rusher last year with just 597 yards on the ground and 4.6 yards per carry. It's the first year that in recent memory that Steve Sarkisian has not had a 1,000-yard tailback in his coffers. And that's something he's prided himself on. As a matter of fact, when he first got to the Big 12, I got to ask him about that because he had Bijan Robinson back there. He's like, look, I love to run the football. And I've had a 1,000-yard tailback at Alabama, and I expect to have 1,000-yard tailbacks at Texas. This dude loves to run the football. He also loves his window dressing and his RPO offense. That said, you could go down the list of, I think, 4 guys that we all thought were capable of being 1,000-yard rushers for him, and none of them turned out. Contravion Wisner, Christian Clark, C.J. Baxter, Jarrett Gibson. We all thought those guys were going to be good. So much so that they needed to come into the portal and come out with Hollywood Smothers at NC State and Raleek Brown at Arizona State, in which case we expect they will be better. And we expect that the addition of Cam Coleman on the outside with Emmett Mosley and Ryan Wingo will make them better. They lost DeAndre Moore to the portal, but they don't seem to be that broken up about it. Raleek Brown is 1,000-yard rusher. He proved he could do that at Arizona State. I think he had 1141 altogether. I'm not sure what we're going to do with Emmett Mosley just yet. I mean, 9 games, 525 yards, not bad, but when he was in games, he was great. Ryan Wingo has always been my guy that I expect is going to break out and have a tremendous year, but I need him to start playing the first half of the year like he did the second half of the year. That said, when he was ready to go, he was elite. Cam Coleman, he has everything you need to be elite, but he hasn't had the service coming from Auburn, and I understand that. At tight end, they're going to be a little bit different when Nick Townsend transfers in from Michigan State. They'll get a little bit of run there. But that offensive line is going to have to do its job. Trevor Goolsby is going to have so much on his plate as left tackle again, and I think that they're going to be okay. I do. On the defensive side, the best player on that team, as I've said all offseason, is Colin Simmons. But 6'3", 240, we already know what we're going to do with him. We're going to double team him. We're going to chip. It's what can you do in the middle? What can you do with outstanding linebacker like Rasheem Bowles, who I think had like 82 tackles or whatnot last year. But I'm also thinking about, do we expect Grayson Littleton to come on? Yeah, I do. I think that dude can be a player. I think he's really good. I think Jelani McDonald has the an opportunity to be really great. I think that Will Muschamp is going to inject a little bit more nasty into this defense than you've seen in a while. Texas fans are right to be excited about what he can provide them. I don't know that it's going to be like it was when he was DC the first time around, but it could get close. He doesn't care about anybody's feelings. He's a head coach of the defense. He's going to do it his way, no highway option. And I think as a fan, you're going to be into that. It's whether or not the players are going to respond to that. That's my real question. I'm also interested to see if Rasheem Bowles becomes another Anthony Hill Jr. going into his senior year there. It's a dude that you want, right? I think that Rasheem Bowles could be an SEC Defensive Player of the Year if he gets enough sacks and forced fumbles. Tackling alone is not going to get you that award, generally speaking, especially when you've got guys like KJ Bolden and Ellis Robinson over at Georgia, just to name a couple. Prince Will Umanmielen at LSU is another one that I could mention. There's going to be a couple of guys to give them the run for it, but top to bottom, this team is extremely talented. And while they lost last year's number 1 on the wide receiver side, I just don't think that's that big a deal. I also think having a former head coach as a defense coordinator is always a good thing. I think the only question I have is what happens if Arch Manning can't go? Is that Dia Bell's job now? Maybe, maybe not. Do we think that Arch Manning has to be as mobile this year as he did last year? No. I think that Arch can do what Trinidad Chambliss did for Ole Miss. I think he's got that capacity. I think he can play that way week in and week out. Defensively, it's can you keep a lid on the defense long enough for them to run the football? I think that if Texas is to win an SEC championship, they're going to have to play defense the way that Georgia plays defense, which means they're going to have to run the ball the way that Georgia runs the ball. And I think Will Muschamp wants that to happen. I think Steve Sarkisian wants that to happen. I don't think he wants it to be all on Arch's shoulders. When it was last year, they started to play well, especially when they needed to come back to beat Mississippi State. But they were tight game against Mississippi State, tight game against Kentucky, lost to Florida, and didn't look great again until they started to play Vanderbilt. Now, going into this 2026 season, I'm looking at their schedule. And there's some muster over there. For starters, you're talking about Ohio State and Ole Miss on the 40 acres. That's helpful to you. Pete Golding got to come to the 40 acres. Ryan Day got to come to the 40 acres. I'm excited about that game. I expect it to be hot. I expect it to be noisy. I expect it to be burnt orange everywhere. But Ohio State tends to travel very, very well. They also, they also got an SEC schedule, man. And that's the easiest team on their schedule is UTSA. And I don't think that UTSA is going to be that easy. I don't think that they're going to lose to UTSA. But if you're looking at it, right, like Texas State, UTSA, Ohio State, those are your non-cons. Then you're at Tennessee in Neyland. Maybe you get a Faison Brandon, who's a 5-star quarterback, making his first big-time start, and that helps you. And you got the bye week. Then you got Oklahoma. Florida, John Sumrall is going to turn that into the Jaden Boss show, expecting to try to run the ball, and you got to play defense, low-scoring game if at all possible for the Gators. Ole Miss, you get them at home. Mississippi State, you get them at home. Then you're at Missouri. You're at LSU. You get Arkansas. You got A&M. This is a doable schedule. This is a schedule for which you can get into the SEC championship game. It's also what many people consider to be one of the toughest schedules in the country. I think that is because Oklahoma and Tennessee are doing a lot of work from last year here. Oklahoma has a lot to show me. And by a lot to show me, I mean that John Mateer can be a force to be reckoned with in the SEC against good opponents. Because in this game, he got destroyed. This was not a John Mateer game. This was an Arch game. This was a game where Arch got to wave goodbye to Oklahoma fans in Dallas. Show me and tell me why that's going to be different this year. I'm not sure, right? So when we talk about how tough this schedule is, we're including Oklahoma here and what they did last year. Tennessee and what they did last year, right? Do we think that Florida's really going to be as bad as they were last year? No, we think they're going to be better. So that helps you as well. This Ole Miss team is mostly intact offensively when you talk about what Kejuan Lacey and Trinidad Chambliss mean to that offense. But defensively, Pete Golding might have to do some work. Are they as good as they were last year? Mississippi State, I think they're going to be about what they were last year. Missouri, that's tough if Ahmad Hardy's ready to go. It's not as tough if it's just Jamal Roberts. Okay. At LSU, yeah, okay, it's a tough game. All right. Arkansas, you ought to beat Arkansas. At A&M, Texas is a tough game, but you've been having the measure of them. Really, we're talking about Ohio State and LSU. Those are the two programs I think that have the capacity to push this Texas team to the brink. I think that's the best thing. I think we're also looking at their first trip to Baton Rouge for Texas since 1953, so expect that to be just a riot, guys. Like every LSU home game is going to be awesome this year because that's what it's been building to since Lane Kiffin came there in a whirl of dust from Oxford, Mississippi. Texas has also won three straight, and I think five of the last six versus Texas A&M. So while Texas A&M might think this is the year, I don't know about that. Again, I see all this swinging in Texas's favor, which is why I'm putting more on Texas's shoulders to go get done this year. I'm not at all swayed by this schedule argument. I think it's BS. I think that last year it was BS. I think that, yeah, Arch Manning deserves so much criticism and credit for what they were last year, which is a 10-win team. That's not too shabby. Playing in the Citrus Bowl. And then Arch said the right thing about playing in the Citrus Bowl. Like, it's, what he did versus what his uncle did. And he's like, look, no disrespect, but he played in this thing more than once. I don't want to play in this thing more than once. I want to play in the playoff. And I'm with that, right? I am. I like where he's coming from with this energy. Is this offensive line going to be able to keep him upright? I mean, we're talking about an offensive line that's been together for a while. They got to combine 123 starts, and they've averaged about 330 pounds across the line and all since Arch started playing quarterback back there. I think it has a chance to be good. I think for them to go where they want to go, it's got to be a Joe Moore Award winning offensive line. That means you got to keep Arch upright and you got to clear some blocking, some run lanes, because not having a 1,000-yard rusher is as much on the offensive line as it is on the running backs. These are things that I expect them to try to correct. Last thing that I want to mention before we close it out on what it is that I think Texas is going to be. Man, why do I keep hitting the wrong button on that? My goodness. If the Will Muschamp experiment works, will it work against Georgia? Will it work in the playoffs? That's the real question for me. We don't have an answer for that. We don't. I think we'll know a lot playing Ohio State because that's a playoff team. That's a good team. It's a team playing the Big Ten championship game, and a team that, at the very least, didn't get bounced until Miami last year. I say until. Ohio State fans hear me. The tongue in my cheek. I'm not quite sure that Will Muschamp is going to be the guy to put them over the top, but Texas fans certainly believe so, and so does Steve Sarkisian. You tell me in the comments below, what do you think Texas' win-loss record will be at the end of the 2026 season? And as a bonus, is this the team to win Texas' first national championship since 2005?